Nobody realized the cameras had already captured everything. At first, the moment looked like ordinary baseball chaos. A dangerous pitch. A heated reaction. Players yelling near the baseline while both dugouts emptied onto the field. But then the replay slowed down. And suddenly the entire stadium understood why Major League Baseball would later respond with the heaviest punishment the sport had seen in decades. Shohei Ohtani was not just caught in the middle of a baseball fight. According to millions of fans watching live, he looked like the target of something far uglier. And the worst part for the Rockies was that every second of it had been recorded from multiple angles. Every shove. Every movement. Every reaction inside the dugout. Once the footage began spreading across the country, Colorado's explanation stopped mattering. Because the cameras had already told a completely different story. The game itself had started normally enough. Dodgers vs. Rockies was never supposed to become the biggest controversy in baseball. On paper, it looked like a mismatch. The Dodgers entered the series fighting near the top of the standings while Colorado continued struggling through another frustrating season. But sometimes the most dangerous games are the ones nobody expects to become emotional. And from the opening inning, something about the atmosphere inside the stadium felt strange. Rockies pitchers were working aggressively inside against Dodgers hitters. Colorado players shouted loudly from the dugout after routine strike calls. Even the broadcasters noticed the unusual tension early. One commentator quietly mentioned during the second inning that the Rockies looked irritated already. At the time, it sounded harmless. Later, it sounded almost prophetic. And standing in the middle of all of it, as always, was Shohei Ohtani. Every time Ohtani stepped onto the field, the energy inside the stadium shifted instantly. Fans stood up before he even entered the batter's box. Children pressed against the railings holding signs with his name written in blue ink. Camera flashes exploded from every direction whenever he adjusted his batting gloves near home plate. For opposing teams, that kind of attention can become exhausting emotionally. Pitchers know that one mistake against Ohtani can live online forever. One hanging slider can become the clip replayed across television and social media for the next week. And by the middle innings of this game, the Rockies already looked emotionally overwhelmed trying to contain him. Earlier in the night, Ohtani had already ripped a double into the right center gap and scored after stealing third base moments later. The Dodgers dugout fed off his energy while Colorado seemed to grow more frustrated every inning. Rockies pitchers took longer between pitches against him. Catchers repeatedly visited the mound before his at-bats. And still, nothing seemed to slow him down. But what happened in the sixth inning changed the entire night. The Dodgers were leading by 2 runs when Ohtani stepped into the batter's box again with 1 out and a runner on first. The crowd rose to its feet immediately. The Rockies pitcher stared toward home plate while rubbing the baseball in his glove longer than usual. The catcher sat up inside. Very far inside. Even the commentators noticed it. Then came the pitch. 97 miles per hour. Directly toward Ohtani's upper body. The ball exploded dangerously high and tight, forcing Ohtani to spin violently away from the plate at the last possible second. The crowd gasped loudly as the pitch barely missed his helmet. Dodgers players instantly stood near the dugout railing shouting toward the field. Dave Roberts took several fast steps out of the dugout before stopping himself. Ohtani looked surprised more than angry. He adjusted his helmet calmly and stepped back toward the batter's box while boos rained down from every section of the stadium. At first, it looked like another dangerous pitch. Then the cameras caught the Rockies' dugout. Several Colorado players were laughing. One player appeared to clap while another mimicked Ohtani jumping backward away from the ball. The broadcast showed the reaction for only a few seconds before returning to the field. But those few seconds changed everything. Because social media caught it immediately. Within minutes, clips of the dugout reaction spread everywhere online. Fans replayed the footage frame by frame. And suddenly the dangerous pitch no longer looked accidental to millions of people watching. The atmosphere inside the stadium transformed instantly. Every Rockies player was booed aggressively for the rest of the inning. Every close pitch triggered furious reactions from the crowd. But strangely, Ohtani himself never escalated anything. He simply stepped back into the batter's box quietly while chaos grew around him. That detail mattered later. Because while the baseball world exploded emotionally, Shohei Ohtani remained completely calm. Then came the moment nobody could believe. On the very next pitch, Ohtani crushed a towering home run deep into the night sky. The ball disappeared into the right field seats while the stadium erupted with noise so loud the television broadcast briefly struggled to hear itself. Ohtani rounded the bases without celebration. No bat flip. No stare toward the mound. Nothing. He simply jogged calmly while Rockies players stood frozen near the dugout. But the story was no longer just the home run. Because as Ohtani crossed home plate, another confrontation began near the Dodgers dugout. Several Rockies players started shouting toward the field. Dodgers players responded immediately. Coaches rushed between both sides trying to prevent escalation. Then suddenly, one Colorado player charged toward the area near home plate while another shoved a Dodgers player near the baseline. Within seconds, both dugouts emptied completely. The crowd inside the stadium exploded. Bodies crashed together near the infield grass. Gloves flew across the dirt. Coaches screamed for players to separate. Mookie Betts sprinted directly into the middle of the pile while Max Muncy shoved one Rockies player backward near first base. And right in the center of all the chaos was Shohei Ohtani. One replay angle later showed Ohtani being grabbed near the shoulder as players collided around him. Another camera appeared to capture a Rockies player pushing toward Ohtani even after umpires had begun restoring order. That was the moment the feeling around the stadium changed completely. Fans were no longer watching emotional baseball. They were watching something that looked genuinely dangerous. The broadcasters became unusually quiet while the replay rolled repeatedly on screen. One commentator finally broke the silence with a sentence that instantly spread across social media. "Colorado is going to have serious problems after tonight." That line proved to be completely correct. Because once Major League Baseball began reviewing the footage, the situation became much worse for the Rockies. Every angle told the same story. Dangerous inside pitching. Dugout reactions appearing to celebrate it. Escalation after Ohtani's home run. And physical contact continuing during the fight itself. According to reports later that night, league officials had already begun reviewing camera footage before players had even left the stadium. That almost never happens. Usually investigations take time. Usually emotions cool down first. But this situation moved unusually fast. And people around baseball immediately understood why. The footage looked terrible. Inside the Dodgers clubhouse after the game, the mood reportedly felt furious but controlled. Players were angry. Coaches were emotional. But most attention remained focused on Ohtani himself. He sat quietly near his locker while trainers examined his shoulder and back. Reporters noticed redness near the area where he had twisted away from the dangerous pitch earlier in the inning. Yet even then, Ohtani barely spoke. He kept his eyes down while chaos unfolded around him publicly. On the opposite side of the stadium, the Rockies clubhouse carried a very different feeling. Several players reportedly avoided reporters completely. Coaches insisted the inside pitch had simply gotten away accidentally. But every explanation sounded weaker every time the replay aired again on television. Because the issue was no longer just the pitch itself. It was the reactions afterward. The laughter. The gestures. The escalation. The appearance that Colorado players had emotionally lost control. When Dave Roberts entered the press conference room later that night, the atmosphere immediately became silent. He sat down slowly in front of the microphone and folded his hands together before reporters even began asking questions. Everyone already knew what the first question would be. Did Roberts believe the Rockies had intentionally targeted Shohei Ohtani? Roberts paused for several long seconds before answering. "There's aggressive baseball," he said quietly. "And then there's behavior that puts players at risk." Nobody interrupted him. When multiple things happen in one game, eventually people stop believing it's accidental. The room became completely silent. Another reporter asked Roberts whether he expected Major League Baseball to become involved officially after reviewing the footage. This time Roberts leaned back slightly before answering carefully. "I think the cameras probably captured enough." That sentence exploded across sports media almost instantly. Because managers almost never speak that cautiously unless they expect major consequences. And according to insiders, those consequences became far more serious than anyone expected. By the next morning, every sports network in America opened with the same replay package. Ohtani diving away from the fastball. Rockies players laughing in the dugout. The home run moments later. The bench-clearing confrontation. Ohtani getting grabbed during the chaos. The footage played non-stop across television and social media while fans argued furiously online about whether Colorado had crossed the line intentionally. Then reports started emerging that MLB officials were considering the harshest disciplinary action in modern league history connected to player safety violations during an on-field altercation. That phrase alone shocked people around the sport. Former players appearing on television looked stunned. One analyst said something that perfectly captured the mood around baseball. This stopped being about baseball the moment Ohtani became vulnerable in the middle of that fight. That sentence spread everywhere online because it reflected exactly why the footage had disturbed so many people. Shohei Ohtani is not simply another superstar player. He is the global face of the sport itself. Stadiums sell out when he travels. International broadcasts revolve around his games. Entire generations of fans began watching baseball because of him. And because of that reality, the incident instantly became much larger than Dodgers versus Rockies. It became a league-wide crisis about player safety and emotional control. Then came the announcement that completely stunned baseball. Major League Baseball officially confirmed unprecedented disciplinary action against multiple Rockies players and staff members following its investigation into the confrontation involving Shohei Ohtani. Massive suspensions were handed down immediately. Historic financial penalties followed. And according to league officials, the punishment specifically referenced coordinated conduct endangering player safety and escalating on-field violence. The baseball world froze. Television anchors reread the statement multiple times live on air. Former players admitted they had never seen MLB respond this aggressively before. Some fans argued the punishments were excessive. Others believed the league had no choice after what the cameras showed. But ironically, through all the outrage and chaos, Shohei Ohtani himself remained the calmest person involved in the entire story. When reporters finally asked him directly about the punishments later that evening, Ohtani stood quietly beside his locker and answered softly. One reporter asked whether he believed the league's response was justified. Ohtani paused briefly before speaking. "I just want baseball to stay safe for everyone." The room became completely silent. Another reporter asked whether he felt the Rockies had intentionally targeted him throughout the game. Ohtani lowered his eyes for a moment before answering again. "There are a lot of emotions during games. But we all have responsibility." Even after becoming the center of the biggest controversy in baseball, he still refused to attack anyone publicly. And somehow that made the entire situation feel even heavier. Because while the baseball world screamed around him, Shohei Ohtani simply stood there quietly speaking about responsibility, safety, and protecting the game itself. Over the following days, the replay footage continued spreading across the internet while debates consumed sports media non-stop. Did MLB overreact? Did the Rockies deserve the heaviest penalty in league history? Should baseball punish emotional confrontations more aggressively moving forward? But underneath every argument sat one reality the sport could not ignore anymore. The cameras had seen everything. And once the entire world saw it too, baseball knew it could never pretend the moment was just another fight.